Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So I've talked about album bomb weeks in rapid succession before. They've got a weird impact in the Hot 100, normally sweeping away great chunks of the charts, but if they land high enough back to back, they mostly wind up replacing each other. Such was this week with Olivia Rodrigo, landing a slightly smaller impact that wasn't quite enough to knock off J. Cole from the Hot 100 entirely, but she did do damage, and that makes whatever comes next, really next week to fill in the gap, kind of intriguing, but not so much for our top 10, because just like last week, the expected album bomb number 1 was blocked by a top debut that I did predict, Butter by BTS at number 1. Now we'll get into the details about the song more later on, but BTS's team has learned in the pursuit of chart success, so beyond just the insane sales and the YouTube that's not really sustainable, they're making a not unconvincing radio run. So while I don't expect this to hold the spot for even another week, they are building a more sustainable hit, and they're throwing some real weight behind it, so I'd expect this to stay in the top 10, if maybe not number 1. But it knocked back Good For You by Olivia Rodrigo down to number 2, and there was some competition here, especially given strong sales, better streaming overall, problems that the song hasn't really built that radio traction earlier, and lost that little bit of an edge in the margins. But this is where her album bomb really kicked in, because Deja Vu returned to number 3 thanks to its own insane streaming and a more defined radio run, but then again, it still feels a little bit slower than it should be. This places Levitating by Dua Lipa featuring DaBaby in a funny position at number 4. The sales are still good, the streaming is fine, but it looks like it's getting a radio push, and I gotta wonder why. I'm not sure that channel alone is enough to muscle it up to number 1, especially as they already pulled out all the sales tricks. It does hold up over Leave the Door Open by Silk Sonic at number 5, but peaking on the radio with sales ebbing away, it doesn't bode well for future traction, you could point that out. And Peaches by Justin Bieber featuring Daniel Caesar and Giveon at number 6 just lags behind it in every category, not even able to muster the radio takeover to go back to the number 1. Then we get the slight pickup for Save Your Tears by The Weeknd and Ariana Grande at number 7, with an alright week on sales and streaming, but it is in radio freefall, it's losing on the margins there, and while I keep saying it's going to get eclipsed by Kiss Me More by Doja Cat featuring SZA at number 8, outside of much better streaming, that song just hasn't closed the margin enough on the sales and the radio. Next up, we got another album bomb entry from Olivia Rodrigo with Traitor at number 9, it's the streaming, no surprises there, and then clawing back into the top 10, we got Astronaut in the Ocean by Masked Wolf at number 10, because while its sales are still kind of ridiculous, its weak streaming and lack of proper radio momentum is holding it back from making a more impactful run, at least until all the album bomb entries above it fall out. It could jump up a bit. And while we're on that subject, a lot of our losers and dropouts, with the latter category mostly being filled up with songs that are kind of falling short, which is kind of a shame because outside of Lady by Brett Young, I kind of like all of them. La Noche de la Noche by Bad Bunny and Rosalia, The Business by Tiesto, Shut Up, I still like that, and most unfortunately, Street Runner by Rod Wave. Look, when the song just gets zero consistent radio traction long term, the run's gonna fizzle out before its time, and that song deserved better. But the majority of our losers, they come with the J. Cole album bomb. My Life with 21 Savage and Murray at 21, Pride is the Devil with Lil Baby at 26, Amari at 41, 95 South at 59, Interlude at 71, Applying Pressure at 72, Hunt Mill with Boz at 80, Let Go My Hand with Boz and Black at 83, Punching the Clock at 97, and The Climb Back at 99. But those weren't the only debuts that underperformed. Seeing Green by Nicki Minaj, Drake, and Lil Wayne fell down to 48, Straightenin' by Migos slid down to 69, and on a continued skid, Miss the Rage by Trippie Redd and Playboi Carti fell down to 63. Now the last of our losers, they seem to be fading out a little more naturally, with Streets by Doja Cat clinching its year-end list spot at 79, Tombstone by Rod Wave seeming just to fall short at 82, along with Hold On by Justin Bieber at 86, Follow You by Imagine Dragons at 89, and Pick Up Your Feelings by Jasmine Sullivan at 91, as well as Hello by the late Pop Smoke and A Boogie with the Hoodie once again failing to move all that much at 93. Finally, we got that remix of Goosebumps by Travis Scott and Hume at 84, which which looks like it's finally being rotated out, and if there's any justice in this world, it will fall short of that year-end list. But since it is an album bomb week, we don't really have much in the way of gains or returns. All I know so far by Pink managed to climb back to 87 because, of course, this is getting radio traction. And as for our gains, we saw Nashville throw some weight behind Minimum Wage by Blake Shelton, up big to 70, and Mooski get a remix with Chris Brown for Trackstar to push this up to 32. And while I already mentioned Olivia Rodrigo with Deja Vu, she also saw a boost for Driver's License going up back to 11. What caught more of my interest was the release of 42 Dugg's mixtape that gave a shot for Ford the Gang with Roddy Ricch up to 67. Not the only impact from that tape, but we'll get to that. I'm not complaining about this jumping. But once again, we actually have a pretty stacked list of new arrivals because all of Olivia Rodrigo's album bomb landed in the top 40, and that's not all we got here. So we gotta start off with number 92, 24 Hours by A Boogie with the Hoodie featuring Lil Durk.
$100,000 cars when I 24 hours, baby, 12 times.
Why? No, seriously, the only reason I can fathom as to why A Boogie with the Hoodie has had the staying power outside of his brief moment a couple of years back is because New York needs to have at least one utterly interchangeable trap artist on the scene. The drill scene be damned. I've been saying for years now that A Boogie's just not that interesting, and I'm fairly certain the only reason that he's still charting is more on name recognition. Ergo, I'm placing a lot more weight on this song here because of Lil Durk. And that's probably the right idea, because at least he seems kind of sincere and trying to woo this girl and highlight how a lot of dudes coming out of the streets don't get a lot of girls in the same way, which is surprisingly honest. Whereas A Boogie just goes to the brand names and lets in a little bit more self-serving exasperation than he can convincingly sell at getting so many bitches. And the percussion feels this slow against a reverb-saturated mix. It tells me that A Boogie really wanted to make this his version of Calling My Phone, but even if I'm lukewarm on that song at best, it is catchier and better constructed than this, especially when it comes to bar for bar. A Boogie's just kind of sloppy. So yeah, next. Number 85, Leave Before You Love Me by Marshmello and Jonas Brothers. Because this is what the Jonas Brothers needed to fix their production issues and their waning relevance, to work with Marshmello. Now, truth be told, there's enough other producers and co-writers behind this song to make it an organized production to continue muscling in on that Jonas Brothers comeback whether we want it or not, which is kind of a shame because that Nick Jonas album did have a couple singles that could work if they were pushed, especially as this sounds just like a song from the 1975 circa 2018. No, seriously, that watery guitar rollick off the percussion and the fake hand clap, the vocal layering, especially that lead melody, I could even argue the lyrics play in some of the similar territory, where they would love to stay and have more hot sex, but they just have to take off and run before you fall in love. It's got that same sort of self-facing, but not really vibe that if the Jonas Brothers were a hair less slick or sincere, I'd probably say that Barney Stinson wrote this. But you know, that's the thing. In terms of just ripping off the 1975, the song is crisp and well balanced enough to actually kind of work. In other words, I actually kind of like this one. Make it that what you will. I'm as surprised as you might be. Number 68, Maybach by 42 Dugg featuring Future.
No, this is not a S-Class Maybach. I've been turning up for my city.
Cherry Production.
I've been turning up for my city.
So this is that other impact of note for the mixtape that 42 Dugg put out. The collab with Future that got a music video and, well, this is actually partially an interpolation of Future's song of the same name from 2016, which might be kind of cliche Future, but it hits considerably harder than this. And on some level, this feels more like Future's song than 42 Dugg's, even if they both seem weirdly placed a little bit too far back in the mix. Or maybe it's because the main melody feels so buried behind the much heavier trap beat and the synth bass, and there's just so much empty space all around them that doesn't fit. It doesn't sound badly mixed or mastered, the song just feels hollow, which is kind of appropriate as 42 Dugg has nothing to really say beyond brand names and a few tossed off commemorations. I can imagine a lot more people will care about Future post Lori Harvey going back to nihilistic monster mode given he does reference it, but this verse does not reflect a lot of that focus and tightness of that era, especially as in between all the flexing he's complaining about having to pay child support support. I don't know, you can tell this became a single because of the feature, but I'm really not sure it's enough to make me care more. For the Gang goes way harder than this, and it's just really not that good. Let's move on. Number 66, Sun Goes Down by Lil Nas X.
From your life where you got plenty of every hurt and heartbreak, you just take it all to the face.
Am I the only one a little bit perturbed that this single hasn't seemed to catch the same attention as Montero Call Me By Your Name did? It's just odd that there's less of the flagrant promotional tactics being muscled behind this song for Lil Nas X, and it's kind of a shame, because I think I might like this more. Yeah, there are some problems. It's basically one verse bracketed by extended hooks, and the production still feels a little bit clunky and overcompressed, which is evidence of Lil Nas X once again pushing more fragments instead of fully fleshed out songs. But he does manage to put a lot in this already. It explores a lot of deep-seated anxieties and depression that has moments where he thought about ending it all to see the sun, but he's letting that sun go down, and that allows him some moments of vulnerability and the gratitude to his fans to feel very genuine. I actually really like that he references how much he used to stan Nicki Minaj, because it highlights how online fandom can become a place where people find some comfort. And as much as the frail acoustics feel a little bit underweight opposite the beat, the strings sliding in might be cliched, but it is a nice touch. And yeah, it might be a little bit short, prime for that expanded remix, I know what game you're playing, but it does do what it sets out to do really well. Good stuff. I like this. Number 66, Twerkulator by City Girls.
I'ma shake what my mama gave me. I'ma shake my money maker. It's time for the twerkulator. It's time for the twerkulator. It's time for the twerkulator. It's time for the twerkulator.
Am I the only one who is convinced the City Girls probably should be bigger than they are? I kept thinking we're going to see a breakthrough for them a couple of years back alongside Cardi B, but it's been really hit and miss since then. And with this song, well, it's a flip of the first ever rap song that used an 808, Planet Rock by Africa Bambaataa, which also got acclaim for being an early fusion of rap and electronic music, and of course it led to sample clearance issues for this track when it started going viral on TikTok. They eventually got it all figured out, but it was left off the City Girls' most recent project. But in a strange way, it feels like City Girls used that as an excuse to go full retro, down to a lot of the flows on their verses, and the uncredited Lil Yachty playing Hype Man, and how the song allows City Girls to default to your standard ass-shaking anthem. Which, alright fine, it's their bread and butter, but this is the sort of song that highlights just how limited the City Girls have been in both personality and content, where their peers have found a little bit more to work with or have expanded just a bit. I certainly don't mind this as a song, although given the heinous charges thrown at Africa Bambaataa in recent years, you would think that the City Girls could have chosen a different act to sample and split with, but this also feels like an undercooked fragment, and not one I can see lasting all that long. Just saying. Next up, number 33, Gang Gang by Polo G and Lil Wayne.
Lay him down, hit his top close range. He just for 10, he not with the gang. Remember back then, I said out what he bang. Running from Jake's block high like I'm Wayne. Spent a $250,000 on the watch and the chain.
So even though I've effectively covered Polo G a few times courtesy of his album bombs, I actually would really like to review one of his projects proper on my main channel at some point. Patrons, if you're looking for ideas, go ahead. And given how much Rapstar has really grown on me, I was curious how he'd play off Lil Wayne on this song, and honestly, pretty well. The glassy rattle of faded synths is well balanced opposite the sandy percussion and the thick bass hits, and if there's gonna be a song where both rappers are talking about the bleak experience of shooting snitches in the streets, Polo G, he at least sounds pretty credible here, even if I think his verse might be a little bit short. But then we have Lil Wayne, and sure, he's focused, and the sports references actually kind of work, and for once he actually avoids all the toilet humor, but I've heard him do better. I'm not wowed by the verse, and it makes me think if Polo G really wanted to go toe-to-toe with his idol, he could have here. But as it is, yeah, you know what, it's fine. I guess I'll take it. Number 29, Hope You're Okay by Olivia Rodrigo.
Head blonde with eyes of soap. You played the drum in the marching band.
So like last week, nearly all the remaining songs are from one artist except the number one, and I've already reviewed Olivia Rodrigo and On the Pulse on my main channel. It's a shorter review to be sure, but it's a shorter album. A lot less to say about it, so I'm going to try to keep this fairly brief. Now this is one of the songs I actually liked a fair bit as the closer with the faint rattle of bass strumming playing off the haze of guitar and the twinkles, as Olivia Rodrigo reflects on teenage friends who had rough and unsupportive families, where she hopes that they've been able to move on effectively, with some loose sketches to the breakup narrative that she's put on the album as a whole. Now I will say, trying to make a parallel between her breakup and queer teenagers suffering the neglect and abuse from their families, that's kind of questionable. It is a very "you need to calm down" sentiment, echoed by the Swift-esque backing vocals on the bridge. And you know, just for me, I think it was a mistake to leave in some of the inaudible studio chatter around the very end of the outro. But you know what? The sentiment does feel a bit more restrained and mostly genuine. It's fine enough. Just gotta pass. Number 24, Jealousy, Jealousy by Olivia Rodrigo.
Slowly, I think too much about kids who don't know me.
This one's a bit of a clunker for me. The leaden piano with the buzzy guitar embellishments and the sour feeling of spending too much time on Instagram getting jealous of people who flaunt their success. And this is kind of where immersion becomes the issue, because Olivia Rodrigo is a social media starlet who not only has a lot about what she's complaining about, but when wedged into the breakup framing of the entire project, it just adds a layer that might make her seem a bit more relatable, but not exactly likable, and that's assuming you can indeed relate. Woo indeed. Number 19, One Step Forward, Three Steps Back by Olivia Rodrigo.
I'm the love of your life until I make you mad.
Man alive, this composition feels basic. And that's kind of strange, because this was co-written with Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff, who brought in a little bit more refinement to the production and left a pretty obvious influence in the song's lyrical cadence, but it also plays into the uncertain back and forth of a bad relationship, where for as much as Olivia Rodrigo suspects this guy's a gaslighting jerk, she's also second-guessing herself about as much. Again, it leans on being more relatable, and it mostly works, but with the pedigree behind it, I keep thinking that the underlying composition should be a little better. Just a little more going on, all I'm saying. Number 18, Favorite Crime by Olivia Rodrigo.
Well, I hope I was your favorite crime.
This is another song I actually quite like, specifically because it takes the complexity of this failed relationship and adds in more detail, showing that it was spurred on by her now ex cheating on his former partner and then using her crush on him to that advantage. And this is where her wider angle framing actually helps, because she acknowledges that she's not much of a victim here, and that adds some real moral ambiguity to everything on display, which is nice to see for a very high school setting. So yeah, it's great in the context of the album, but I'd also say the spare acoustics that build into the multi-tracking, especially with that final hook, really helps this stand alone. So yeah, this is a great song. Won't really be a single, but as a choice deep cut, I'll recommend it. Number 15, Happier by Olivia Rodrigo.
Go to find someone great, but don't find no one better. I hope you're happy, but don't be happier.
This is the sort of song that only works if you're in high school, because once again, while it is relatable to not want your ex to be happier with his new partner than he was with you, the passive aggressiveness across this hook rings very obvious. It's not being magnanimous, it's putting on a fake smile, and it feels petty as all hell, only accentuated with the waltz piano line and strings for faux elegance that doesn't match in with the guitars and the clicking percussion. So yeah, comfortably the worst song on the album. I don't like this at all. Not good. Number 14, Enough For You by Olivia Rodrigo.
But I don't think that's true, 'cause all I ever wanted was to be enough for you.
So this is the problem with Billboard Breakdown when you have an album bomb for a project that can feel kind of one note, because a lot of what I'm saying is going to repeat itself. Olivia Rodrigo reflecting on the failed relationship where she had overcommitted and she blames herself about as much as she blames her partner, and while there's definitely some relatable truth in trying really hard for a partner where it goes underappreciated or ignored, and I'll give her credit, she can sell that heartbreak, the acoustic composition is just so frail that it doesn't doesn't give this more to stand out for me. I mean, it's okay, but not really memorable, at least for me. Number 12, Brutal by Olivia Rodrigo.
It's brutal out here.
Ah yes, the album opener, where they want to immediately subvert the pretty strings with a lot of sharp, distorted guitars with rattling strums, a bit of feedback creeping in, and a rougher vocal pickup to try and convince people that this is heavier than it actually is. And I said this all in the review, the production from Dan Nigro just leaves this underpowered with more fuzz than actual fire. And again, as much as I can applaud the content for being a raw string of teenage complaints, the whole sardonic flip on the hook means I'm not taking it that seriously. And the lack of serious immersion definitely comes back into play when the song feels like it's supposed to explode just one last time after the outro, and it doesn't. Again, I don't dislike what this was doing. In a way, I kind of admire it charted so high. I just wish it was better at it. Number 9, Traitor by Olivia Rodrigo.
Often dater, guess you didn't cheat, but you're still a traitor.
And this is her highest debut this week. And am I the only one, even with the understanding that it's all pure teenage melodrama, thinks that it's a little oversold to call the guy a traitor just because he found someone new relatively soon after they broke up? What's exasperating is that on a level of emotional logic, it makes sense. She knows it's hyperbolic, and it's why I'm more forgiving of the song. I understand how melodrama works. It's fine. But she's also got a lot of songs on the project in this territory, including Good For You, which is just better all the way down, including Production, where she's immediately in power ballad mode, and she's trying to be very tasteful with the gentle guitars and the keyboards, and I just kind of wish the song went for broke to match how much presence Olivia Rodrigo is trying to deliver vocally. I mean, it's close to some of the backing vocals and the heavier percussion touches, but if you wanted the grand string section, this was the song for it. Probably could have been better placed on the album too. But as it is, it's reflective of the album. Decently written, solidly performed, but underpowered and relying on relatability almost to a fault. Not bad, but not as good as it could have been. All I'm saying. And finally, number 1, Butter by BTS.
I like the moon rock with me, baby. Know that I got that heat. Let me show you, 'cause talk is cheap. Side step right, left to my beat. Can't let it roll.
Am I wrong to have lower expectations for this? BTS singles primed exclusively for the American market, they haven't impressed me or shown off the personality I know this group has, and after Dynamite fell so damn hollow, I didn't expect much out of Butter. And let's be real, there's not that much here. For one, it's not nearly as smooth as it says it is, with that blocky percussion that seems to struggle to get any sense of stable groove, and when you pair it with the fat bass line and the buzzy synths and that tinny squeal leading into the final hook, it feels like BTS is trying to synthesize what Bruno Mars already delivered years ago with finesse, given just how much this song is cribbing from a lot of late 80s pop rap, but with none of the fun texture of New Jack Swing. Like, you know what, if there was a song for rollicking smooth guitars to flatter the group, it's probably this one, and they're just not here. And it's kind of a shame because this is easily the most animated BTS's individual members have sounded outside of their Korean and Japanese material. It's definitely a lightweight dance track in terms of a lot of the content, but they're trying to be a little more debonair and flashy, and it is a look they can pull off pretty well. They've got that level of theatricality. Kind of a shame because I do think this has potential, but it feels like BTS trying to imitate sounds rather than be themselves. And again, they're missing some of the fine details. It's not bad by any means. There's certainly charm to it, just not really gripped. That's all. And you know, that was our week. Feels a little bit shorter, but the best and worst, they do fall out easier. In the latter category, with Happier by Olivia Rodrigo is by far the worst this week, and Maybach by 42 Dugg and Future as the dishonorable mention. I don't even particularly like both the artists here, and yet somehow I feel disappointed. Now, best of the week, however, I'm gonna go Favorite Crime by Olivia Rodrigo. It just edges out Sun Goes Down by Lil Nas X for the honorable mention, which is tying Leave Before You Love Me by the Jonas Brothers and Marshmello. Yeah, look, I know. Next week, the fallout for the past 2 weeks, so strap in for that. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. Now it's